there are things that kind of bubble under the surface after a divorce that can cause you to do certain things or cause you to say certain things.
Yeah.
And that can affect the way you're influencing your children.
Thank you for joining us for the Blended Kingdom Families podcast. This podcast is for blended families, the people who love them, and anyone who just wants to improve their marriage and family relationships.
BKF exists to break the cycle of divorce, equip marriages, and unite blended families with the truth of God's Word. It is our hope that today you will receive biblical guidance and practical resources that will bring unity and peace to create your thriving, healthy home. Let's jump in.
Hey guys, welcome back to the BKF podcast. We are super excited to be with you today. Hope you're having a wonderful day. If you haven't already, please take an opportunity, like, share, comment, leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. If you're listening on Audible, just know that the full video format of this podcast is on our YouTube channel. You can go there, be awesome too, subscribe, and you'll get notified every single Monday when we drop a new podcast. Today, we're launching into something new.
Yes, new series, new 5-part series, you guys. Not 4, but 5.
Yeah, this is all based on our book, Blended and Redeemed, that's going to, it's available for pre-order now. So there's actually a link right below. You can actually pre-order the book.
Yes.
And that is going to be awesome. But it actually releases September 13th.
Yes.
So
excited, you guys.
Excited. It really is a tremendous resource. It is forwarded by our great friend, Pastor Jimmy Evans, released by XO Publishing. Yep. So it's going to be really, really cool. So this 5-part series that we're going to be launching into, I'm really excited about it. And the reason I'm excited, the title of it is Facing New Family Challenges Together. And one of the things that we hear a lot in blended families is, again, parents are so focused on kind of their new marriage and kind of things that are going on, but literally paying attention to the challenges that you're going to face. And what we're going to dive into here are some of the things you may not think about.
Yeah.
But really as part of interacting with children and that part of their process of just moving towards a blended family, we want to talk about those things.
Yeah, and it's so important to talk about the challenges that you can face. Yeah. Just one, I think, for preparation. You know, there's so many unknowns when blending your family. And so just the more prepared that we can be, the more resources that we can tap into, it's just going to better help you, better help your family, better help your marriage and your children.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about 5 different areas. The power of parental influence. We're going to be talking about accommodation, so kind of the actual physical space of the children and kind of some really nuances there. We're going to talk about communication, child manipulation and parent alienation. That's one of the topics that we get a lot of questions on, so we're going to dive into that. And lastly, we're going to finish with just your attitude towards that.
Yeah.
So
also good.
Let's just start from the beginning. And really understand, we talk about parental influence. And as parents, obviously we want to pour in the best of who we are to our children.
Yeah.
But I don't want to negate the fact that the byproduct of divorce is a lot of pain. There's a lot of resentment. There's some anger. There are things that kind of bubble under the surface after a divorce that can cause you to do certain things or cause you to say certain things.
Yeah.
And that can affect the way you're influencing your children.
Yeah, and one thing that, we've talked about is just shame being a huge byproduct of divorce. And having gone through divorce myself and experiencing that, I think I can look back now and see where there are certain moments where that pain and that shame and the guilt and all of those emotions were things that I held on to, and maybe even claimed as a part of who I was, kind of found identity in that.
Yeah.
And how that came out in the way I parented as a single parent. And so, we just want to share some nuggets of wisdom with you and just some encouragement, if you're in that season or maybe you're still struggling with that can help you walk out of that to better parent.
Yeah, and we've talked about in previous episodes when we talk about inner vows and we kind of the origin of those inner vows, and they do come from exactly those feelings: shame, resentment, anger. Yeah. And all of a sudden these inner vows are made, and the inner vows are promises that we make to ourselves.
Yeah.
And they're not from God. They're really from a place of, I just want to protect myself, so I'm not going to feel this way or do this thing. But what we're getting towards when it talks about parental influence, because we're talking about how we influence our children.
Yeah.
And because maybe we're in a position where we're not in a healthy spot, the things that we project or the things that we say, how is that affecting our children and maybe what they think or what they feel?
Yeah. And, one of the things that we're going to talk about is communication and how we can not only effectively communicate with our spouse and our children, but also with our ex-spouse as we continue to journey in our blended families.
Yeah. And you may be sitting here thinking, you're like, I don't know, or maybe let me ask it this way. If I had to ask you, is the way you're influencing your children in relation to your spouse and your ex-spouse, is it healthy? And I think parents kind of sit back and they go, well, I don't know if it's healthy, but it's justified. Like, I feel this way and it's a real feeling for me. So I just want to make sure that my children or child or whatever understands the way I feel about that. Yeah. And again, that's kind of the way we're going to approach this and saying, is that the best for children? Is that the best, makeup for the way your blended family moves forward after this? But I think the first thing to look at is, what is our own health? How are we feeling? How are we processing some of these pains that we may have experienced from divorce?
Yeah, we have a tremendous amount of influence on our children. We have been entrusted from the Lord with them. They're a gift to us. And that influence, like any power, can be used for good or bad. And if we as individuals and as parents, if we are not in a healthy place, if our heart's not in a healthy place, our mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, if we are not healthy, that can really pour out into our children and affect them in a negative way.
Well, and you look at the obvious, guys, the obvious signs of this in terms of parental influence is, what are you saying about them?
Yeah.
When the topic comes up, what are you saying? Because I know there are people out there, and again, I want to use the word justified, but probably in a way that is not what you're thinking. I think that people feel these feelings and they feel justified in saying them. But what I'm getting at is it healthy for children, as I said just before? But how are we talking about our ex-spouses in front of our children? Are we belittling them? Are we telling a side of maybe the divorce story that maybe they're a little too young to understand and maybe get a wrong feeling about? But these are all the absolute things that are right out in front of us. What are we saying, and how are we projecting our feelings onto our children?
Yeah. When it comes to our exes and facing those new family challenges together, what we choose to believe or think about our ex-spouse not only affects our hearts and minds, but it can affect our children's hearts and minds. Yeah. And so it will flow out of you as a blessing or as a curse. And so we have to guard our hearts with vigilance. We have to check our heart, the character of our heart, on a daily basis. And we talk about that a lot, you guys. We talk about getting into the presence of the Lord, making sure that you're spending that daily time with Him so that He can reveal the character of your heart, because that is so important, not only to the Father, but to your spouse, to you as an individual, and to you as your children. And a scripture that I love in Proverbs, it's Proverbs 4:23, and it says, keep your heart with all vigilance. From it will flow springs of life. Springs of life, you guys. So, we want to keep our heart in wisdom and follow the path of righteousness so that God can continue to shape it in a healthy and loving way.
Well, when you say the springs of life, as parents, we're trying to raise healthy, emotionally healthy, physically healthy, spiritually healthy children. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the goals of a parent. We train them up in the Lord. When it talks about flowing of springs of life, the thought that comes to me is, as parents sometimes in blended families, we say things to our children and we don't think about how it maybe stunts their development. Right. Because if you look at it from a child's perspective, they love both parents. They really love them equally. They love them intensely equally. And when you're bringing negativity and you're bringing influence into that child's life, what you're doing is you're creating disunity with the other parent.
Yeah.
You're stunting the development of that relationship. And in order for children to grow up in a healthy way, they need to have healthy relationships with their parents. And if you as a parent are influencing that in a way that's maybe you feel like is, you're just kind of airing your grievances, and we can talk a lot about, why people do that, make themselves feel better and things like that. But really what you're doing is you're putting a relationship in front of your child and you're causing their relationship with their other parent to be disjointed.
Yeah.
What that can do later in life is immensely important. How will they look at their future spouses? How will they look at their future relationships? How will they determine how they speak about their parents to their future relationship?
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we been in a situation where we've met somebody and when you ask them about their parents and they say, well, they didn't get along at all. They hated each other, or they always yelled at each other. They spoke really badly of each other.
Yeah.
And then you look at their marriage and what example did you speak?
Yeah.
So again, the ripple effect, the springs of life that flow downstream have enormous effect on what we say.
Well, and to put it bluntly, you guys, it's not honoring to God. And that's, one of the greatest commandments is to love your neighbor as yourself, and to love one another as Christ loves us. And so, God is a God of peace and unity, not resentment and division. And so when we're using words to tear other people down, and we're belittling our ex-spouse in front of the children, just understand that not only is that, in a sense, so to speak, speaking death over them, and watching what those words, what the enemy can do with those words, and cause destruction in the lives of your children, even in your family and your ex's family.
Well, and there's another side to this, guys. There's an opposite of what we're talking about, is when you speak life, when you speak blessings, when you speak good thoughts over your ex-spouse, when you speak to your children and you talk about the great things that are going on, the way that you encourage their relationship. Again, guys, we are not discounting the pain of divorce. We know that is really traumatic on not only each spouse, but it's also the children. But the choice that we make moving forward, how we speak, if speaking life is honoring to God, it is honoring your parental influence of your child. It is going to put them on a different plane moving forward.
Yeah. And we just want to make sure that we're doing that in a positive way. And everything that you were saying, Scott, is it's using our parental influence in a positive way. And it not only enriches the child's relationship with both parents, but it can even enrich or better help your relationship with your ex-spouse. If that's something that you've struggled with over the years, or, you've had seasons of lows. And so, again, just using our words, it says life and death is in the power of the tongue. So are we speaking life or are we speaking death? Because our words matter, and the fruit that our words produce, it can be spoiled and rotten, or it can be fruitful and good. Yeah.
And I kind of want to close with this, as it talks about parental influence. God still wants to bless your relationships. He still wants to bless you as parents. And when we allow disunity to fester, that's the devil's playground.
Yeah.
I mean, the devil already thinks he won. And when you allow this to continue in your blended family, he continues to thrive.
Yeah.
I mean, the light is the light, and God is God today, tomorrow, and yesterday, and he can bless your relationship. But it does take some action items on our part. And a lot of that is just the intentionality of understanding where we're influencing, what we're speaking, what we're saying. And if you're in that environment, I just want to encourage you, you're not stopped. You can make a decision to move forward. You can change the tone of your voice. You can change the tenor of which you speak to your children about your ex-spouse. And you can watch relationships be healed. You can watch children thrive because you've chosen a different path.
Yeah. Yeah. And the best weapon that we have to fight against the enemy and his schemes to still the institution of family. I mean, that's really what he's after, you guys. It's to be loving and have a grace-filled heart and attitude toward the person that you're raising your child with. And so if we can do that, you guys, we can break so many chains. We can change the course of family and just the generations to come. And so I love that you mentioned that about, you know, just breaking that off and just using our words for good. So,
well, we have that power because God gives us that power.
Yeah.
And he gives us that choice.
Gives us the authority.
And I know this podcast, if you're listening to this and it's hit home for you, and I think it hits home for a lot of blended families because, again, sometimes we use those weapons to make us feel better about the pain that we're feeling.
Yeah.
So I know this hits home for a lot of blended families. And I just want to encourage you, again, to look at it from the lens of your children, to look at the power that God gives you as a parent to influence your children. And what are you doing with that?
Yeah.
Are you using it to raise up amazing, godly children?
Yeah.
Or are you going to be the thing, and because of your words and your actions, that your children have to continue to heal from?
Yeah.
So this is a really good one. And again, guys, I hope that you enjoyed it. This is a touch on the broader topic that we talked about in our book. So next week, we're going to talk about something a little bit more, I think, real practical.
Yeah.
That I thought was, as a blended family ourselves, when we learned about this, we were like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. We're going to talk about accommodations, which is really kind of like where the children are and what we can do about that.
Yeah.
But again, all comes from our book, Blended and Redeemed, that releases in September. Again, pre-orders are live right now. You can go get a pre-order copy of that. And it'll
on
deliver
Amazon.
On Amazon. So guys, thank y'all so much for hanging out with us today. I hope you've enjoyed this. Next week, we're going to go into the second part of our series on accommodation. Can't wait to see you there.
Be blessed in all that you do today.
Hey guys, so glad you were here with us today, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
And you can find more resources from Blended Kingdom Families at blendedkingdomfamilies.com. Join us again next time as we hang out with more amazing podcast guests. And remember, nothing will be impossible with God.